Today we have with us Chris Napoleon, President and CEO of Napoleon Engineering Services here in Olean, New York. Welcome, Chris.
Why, thank you for having me, Evelyn.
Now I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Napoleon Engineering Services.
Sure. Napoleon Engineering Services specializes in bearing inspection, bearing testing, and custom bearing manufacturing. We've been around since 1997. I started the business in a spare bedroom in a half bay of my garage in Olean, New York, at the age of around 27, I think. And we've grown since there, and today we still make our home in Olean.
You mentioned that you started your own business. Now, what characteristics when you were growing up made you want to be an engineer and possibly start your own business one day?
You don't wake up one day necessarily and say, I want to be an engineer or a machinist or a veterinary technician or whatever your interest might be. They develop from an early age. And for me, I suppose I was always around building construction. My dad was a teacher, but he did a lot of his own building of our house and additions. And so as a young kid, I saw that happening, and I picked up the hammer and the saw. And in fact, as I got older, I would buy my dad woodworking machines and equipment just so that I could use them. And we lived out in the country, and I always wanted a motorcycle. I bought a $50 beat up old bike with a lot of parts and tried to keep that running as long as I could possibly do that. And that developed my interest from a mechanical standpoint. I like to build things. So that was the early beginning. As I also, for some reason or other, had an interest in aviation, airplanes. I thought it was awesome to possibly fly. No one in my family flew, but it was just something in me that piqued an interest. I remember my dad bought me a book about Chuck Yeager. The Right Stuff, it was called. And although I wasn't a great student and certainly didn't love to read books, I did read that book. It was probably the first book I ever read cover to cover. And then I read it 5-6 times after that throughout my life. But that continued to pique my interest in flying. And my parents were good enough to take me to the airports and check out airplanes, but we didn't fly anywhere, but that was something that was of real interest to me. As most people, you need to have some money in your pocket, even as a kid, to do things with your friends and buy that meatball sub at the sub shop or do whatever. And so I got a newspaper route when I was probably in 5th grade, 6th grade, in that neighborhood. And I had said we lived out in the country, but the newspaper route was in town, in Allegheny. And so I had the added responsibility of getting there, either catching a ride with my parents, staying after school during the school year, or in the summertime, riding my bike into town to deliver the newspapers. But that was like running your own business back in the day. I had to purchase the newspapers from the Times-Herald. I got a bill every week that I had to write a check out. I had to collect the money. And if I didn't collect the money, well, if I didn't deliver the papers, then no one was going to give me the money. And so you were running a business as a very young person. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that personal interaction with people. I enjoyed servicing them. And then in high school, I was a busboy at the Castle Restaurant, which is a 5-star restaurant here in Olean. The people would come from far and wide to that facility, and we'd have banquets for over 500 people. It was an amazing facility, and I really enjoyed that work. Learning to service people at a high level, and it has really rubbed off on me in adulthood and with our business here at Napoleon Engineering Services, because we have a motto to answer the phone within 2 rings. It's both a literal and a figurative message or motto that we have. That phone doesn't ring more than 2 times, otherwise I'm jumping over a table to get it. Because on the other side of that line is someone that has a problem that they need a solution for. And that's what drives our success and our value to the customer. So yeah, I worked as a young person, as a teenager, and developed responsibility. And I think that molded me as well to become a good employee, to service our internal and external customers. So I did talk about my mechanical interests, riding motorcycles and being outside and building things. But as I got into high school, um, actually, and I had a little money in my pocket because I was working, right? And my dad gave me an incredible opportunity. He said, "Chris, I understand that you talk about flying, and do you want to do something with that? And if you take some of your newspaper earnings and I'll do what I can, possibly you could take flying lessons. Would you be into that?" And I jumped on the opportunity. Uh, and I started flying when I was a junior in high school. About a year later, just after I graduated from high school, I had my pilot's license. Uh, and that was awesome. It set a potential course for a career. And in that junior year, I had to also think about what I was potentially going to study in college to marry all my interests and put me on a path that would provide me a challenging and rewarding career. So I had this pilot's license that I had earned, which in and of itself was a maturing experience for me. I think anytime an individual sets a goal and goes after it takes determination and dedication, and it's a maturing experience. Uh, and so I took my flying experience and my mechanical interests in building interests and said, maybe if I get a degree in mechanical engineering along with my flying, that will set me up to either fly professionally or to work perhaps in the aerospace industry, which was of interest. And that's how I set my course and set further goals out of high school.
Now, Chris, you mentioned about setting goals and achieving goals. Is that important for a young person to do?
Well, absolutely. I mean, everybody really needs to set some goals, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but I do know that I'm a goal-oriented person, and my objective evidence to validate that is when I was a young kid, I definitely set goals for building things, and then I know that I had set a goal when I was 16 or before I was 16 that I wanted to get my driver's license, my motorcycle license, and my airplane, my pilot's license. And as a young kid, you can make statements and not follow through on some of them. I probably set other goals that I didn't accomplish, but I think it's important to set a goal and then evaluate what you have to do to achieve that goal. And I did achieve all 3 of those. I also know that we lived out in the country. We lived on an older tree farm, and we were constantly cutting down pine trees and climbing trees. And I was into woodworking. And I also said that I wanted to I wanted to live in a log cabin. I thought those were pretty cool. And so that was a goal that I set for myself at a young age. And in adulthood, I've accomplished that. I never forgot that. It takes time. And part of setting a goal is having the dedication, the determination, uh, the stick-to-itiveness, if that's even a word. I like to use that word, to stick to what you want to do. It takes time. You have to be patient. Uh, and I never forgot that. I built my own log home. It was a great learning experience. People ask me, how'd you build this house? You're not a carpenter. Well, don't let anyone define you. You don't have to be defined because of an education, because of your background, because of your color, your skin, or your sex or interests. You should define yourself and go after what is of interest to you. I set some goals. I went after them. I wasn't afraid of failure. I think that's something I want to tell young people is don't be afraid of failure. Uh, you learn from doing, and failure is not great. No one puts on a uniform and goes plays a game and wants to lose, likes to lose. I certainly don't. But again, you set a goal to win. How do you do that? You get a game plan. You carry out the game plan. You adjust as necessary, and you work hard at it. And hopefully you'll win. And if you don't, then you go back and we call it debrief in the aviation industry, in the business industry. We debrief about what it was that we did right, what it was that we did wrong, so that we have a mitigation plan for the next time we're in that situation. So, yeah, setting goals is something that I did as a young person. It's definitely something that I do individually. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to challenge myself to build things and to every day within the business and on the personal level.
So Chris, you told us about your goals. You went to college, you got your engineering degree, you have your pilot's license. What did you do after that?
Like a lot of kids that graduate from college, you've got student loans to pay off, and I was ready to get into the workforce. I still had my passion of flying in aviation, and I looked at business or job opportunities that were in the aerospace industry. And the beauty of education, whether it's formal or informal, through self-study, is it opens up opportunities. Interestingly, when I graduated, I had 2 job offers. I had one with Schlumberger in the oil and gas industry, working in Lake Charles, Louisiana, exploring for oil and gas on offshore drilling rigs. The other opportunity was working with MRC Bearings in Jamestown, New York, who at the time was the largest aerospace ball and roller bearing manufacturer in the world, making bearings for jet and helicopter engines. So diametrically opposed opportunities provided to me because of my background, my education, and so obviously I chose the local job back here in the local region, and started working and worked 7 years as an engineer in manufacturing and application engineering, learning everything that I could over a 7-year period about bearings and their application and their manufacturing. But I was an independent person from the standpoint that I always, I think I had entrepreneurial blood running through my veins. I still do. And my dad's father, my grandfather, was an entrepreneur all his life. He was the oldest of 12, put himself through Temple University, had a degree in chemistry and pharmacy. And he had to take care of all of his siblings. And so I never met him, but I firmly believe that his entrepreneurial spirit lives in me. So one day I came home from work and I talked to my wife and I said, what do you think about starting our own business? And she said, have at it. So a week later, I was gainfully unemployed and started Napoleon Engineering Services, staying in what I knew, bearings, bearing inspection, bearing testing, and custom bearing manufacturing. Started in a spare bedroom and a half bay in my garage on Bishop Street in Olean. And as they say, the rest is history. But that history is humble beginnings, being very fiscally responsible to myself, to my young family, to my customers. And it has paid off that we have been able to sustain and grow our business. And the value of our inspection and testing is very powerful in the global supply chain. So our customers for inspection and testing are large original equipment manufacturers like John Deere, who make finished pieces of equipment all over the world. They want to purchase bearings globally, but as their motto says, nothing runs like a deer. They need to be certain that the bearings that they're going to purchase globally are going to work and be reliable so that their product runs like a deer. And that's what we do. We do provide inspection and testing services to ensure that the bearings that they buy will work. That's one side of our business. The other side of our business that has developed is custom bearing manufacturing. And a large portion of the product that we make is for the aerospace industry, for airplanes, helicopters, spacecraft, rocket engines, satellites. So I'm servicing people, which has a link to my being a busboy and a newspaper carrier. I learned to service people, being the good hands people. It's very important when you're servicing, offering services. And on the manufacturing side, we produce product and interact with a customer base that satisfies my individual passion in the aerospace industry. That I was born with, that I had a goal to pursue. And so I have developed for myself, through my entrepreneurial spirit, a career for not only myself, but the other 50 or more people that work here, that's both challenging and rewarding.